Okay, it is 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Next item on the agenda is item 2, additions and deletions to the agenda. Do we have any additions and deletions? I do have a minor correction on 2 of the items, 5A and 6A. Next to the last lines under land use designation, you'll see it says agricultural 2 unit per 10 acres, and it's supposed to be agricultural 2 up to 1 unit per acre. And you notice it actually says that up in the zoning. I sat there and I looked at it and I said, am I missing something? But anyway, that's both items. So assuming that correction can be made without objection. Next item is item 3A, approval of the minutes of February 23, 2017. Do we have any motion with respect to the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Landers made that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Stewart made that motion. Any discussion on that? Seconded the motion. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item 4A. It's a consent item, but it is quasi-judicial. I'll start by reading the item into the record. It's the McBride accessory dwelling, request for administrative permit use approval to convert a garage into a 572 square foot accessory dwelling. Linda McBride is the owner. Indian River Project Management is the agent. It's located at 1496 Treasure Cove Lane. The zoning is RS3, residential single family up to 3 units per acre. The land use designation is L1, low density residential 1, up to 3 units per acre. As I say, it's consent. It is quasi-judicial. However, before we vote, I just want to make sure and ask that any commissioner who has had any ex parte communications, site visits, independent investigations, or anything else to explore the facts of this matter, or has any conflict or anything that might cause the commissioner not to be able to resolve this on a fair and impartial basis, please disclose any such matters. Hearing none, then we'll proceed. Do we have a motion then on the consent item?
Move to approve with staff's recommendations.
Okay, Dr. Day made the motion to approve the item with staff's recommendations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Grahl seconded that motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Next item is item 5A, which is a quasi-judicial matter not on consent. I'll begin again by reading it into the record. It is FPL Heritage Switchyard. It's a request for administrative permit use approval for a private limited utility facility, specifically an electrical switchyard. Florida Power and Light Company is the owner. Culpeper and Turpinning, Inc. is the agent. It's located at the southeast corner of 4th Street and 98th Avenue. The zoning is A2, agricultural 2, up to 1 unit per 10 acres. The land use designation is Ag 2, which is agricultural 2, up to 1 unit per 10 acres. It is quasi-judicial. Again, we'll start with asking any commissioners to disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, investigations, anything else that they've done to acquaint themselves with the facts in this matter, or to disclose any conflicts which they may have. Any disclosures? I have to disclose a couple of things. Number one, I think I've disclosed this before. I had a brother who died in an accident many years ago, back in 1986. It involved contact with an FP&L power line. As personal representative of his estate, I brought suit against Florida Power and Light. That case settled way back in the 90s. It was a negligence case. It was not an intentional wrong case. So some might think that I would be unfavorable toward FP&L. On the other hand, I will point out that when I was county attorney between 2010 and 2013, I worked quite cooperatively with FP&L on a variety of community electrical issues, which might cause some to think that I would be favorable to FP&L. Personally, I don't think I have any favor or disfavor in either direction. I raised the question with Mr. DeBrawl earlier today, who advised me that he did not believe either of those matters required an automatic recusal. I'm content to go forward because I think I can be fair and impartial. But on the other hand, if there is anyone involved in this case or any commissioner who believes that those matters should disqualify me, please let me know that, and I will be happy to disqualify myself. Okay, we will proceed. We'll start. We'll go ahead, open the hearing. I'd ask anybody who desires to speak on this matter to please stand and be sworn in as a witness by the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And we'll go ahead and begin with a presentation by the county staff.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight we have a request for administrative permit use approval for a private limited utility, which in this case is an unmanned electrical switchyard, to be known as the FPL Heritage Switchyard. Brief project description of the proposal. Subject site is zoned A2, which is a zoning district which requires administrative permit use approval for private limited utilities, which again this project is classified as, and specifically it's an unmanned electrical switchyard. Administrative permit uses require that they meet the specific land use criteria, and in this case specifically 971.44. Those criteria are outlined in your staff report. And an administrative permit use can be granted at the Planning and Zoning Commission approval. So this is the final step in the approval process. It does not go on to the Board of County Commissioners. Here is an overall location map of the, in total, 3 Florida Power and Light projects that have either approved or are in process. So at the top of the screen, you have State Road 60. To the western limit or left of your screen, you have 122nd Avenue. Way down at the South County line, you have the FP&L Indian River Solar Energy Center, which you all approved last month, and the board actually approved this past Tuesday. This request is for the FP&L Heritage Substation, which is at the southeast corner of 4th Street and 98th Avenue. And later we'll hear a proposal for the Blue Cypress Solar Center, which is on the west side of 98th, south side of 4th Street and north of Oslo. So again, you kind of get an overall feel for where all 3 projects coincide in the county. Here is a specific location map showing the project site, and again, it's at the southeast corner of 4th Street and 98th Avenue, and to the west across 98th Avenue is the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center site, which you'll hear later tonight. This subject site is approximately 11 acres in size. Here's an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site. It is an old grove site, and again, you can see the travel way for 4th Street. 98th Avenue south of 4th Street is not improved at this time. Here is an overall site plan of the overall layout, which includes the electrical switch yard, the yard area itself, driveway connection to 4th Street, as well as 2 detention areas to the south. The traffic circulation plan depicts a stabilized driveway connection to 4th Street, as well as an approximately 75-foot turnaround area for maintenance vehicles to come in, park, turn around, and maneuver within the site and exit the site as well. This is, again, an unmanned electrical switchyard, so there is no formal or improved parking area, but again, the turnaround area is where maintenance vehicles will park to conduct their duties. The landscape plan shown on your screen here depicts the local road buffer requirements, which include 4th Street as well as 98th Avenue. Along the east and the south is what we call a 1 tree per 40 requirement, as well as the non-vehicular open space trees, which have been clustered around the south side around the stormwater treatment area. The stormwater plan includes 2 dry detention areas to the south of the yard itself. And lastly, Based on the LDR requirements, there are right-of-way dedications required for this site, which include 60 feet of right-of-way dedication for 4th Street, as well as 60 feet of right-of-way dedication for 98th Avenue. And the site plan depicts those right-of-way dedications as shown. Therefore, staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant administrative permit use approval for the FPL Heritage Switchyard with the conditions stated in the staff report, and those conditions include a written commitment for the 4th Street and 98th Avenue right-of-way dedication, the actual right-of-way dedication to occur prior to CO, and the landscaping and buffer improvements. I want to clarify one thing. As is the case with FPL's request previously, typically we require right-of-way dedications to occur prior to site plan release. However, at their request, we're suggesting that we accept a written commitment for site plan release purposes, and the actual dedication occurred prior to CO, and that's how it's listed in the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Does any commissioner have any questions of the applicant? Is the applicant present?
Yes.
I'd start by asking if the applicant has any questions of the county.
No, thank you, sir.
Okay, please identify yourself. I'm sorry.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Alan, nice to see you. Hello, everybody. As you know, my name is Bruce Barquette. I'm here representing Florida Power and Light. This is the first of 2 items you'll be hearing on Florida Power and Light tonight. The next will be the Blue Cypress Energy Center. This switchyard will serve that energy center as well as the solar energy center, which you approved last month and which was approved by the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday. We completely support the staff report and recommendation and appreciate the work they've put into it. Ryan has worked really hard on this and done a great job. The one comment that we have is on one of the conditions regarding the landscaping. At the County Commission meeting on Tuesday, Commissioner Solari noted that the landscaping requirement for that particular site was pretty heavy relative to what the surrounding property would justify. And the motion was made and seconded, and it was after a suggestion that if the landscaping ordinance is amended before Florida Power and Light pulls its certificate of occupancy, then Florida Power and Light should be permitted to come in and apply for an administrative approval to comply with the new landscaping ordinance in case it reduces the landscaping requirement, because it's pretty heavy. And the staff agreed with that, and the board voted on that. So we request the same consideration tonight. I don't know that board action is required on that. I think if the landscaping ordinance is amended before we pull our certificate of occupancy, we can come to the staff and seek administrative approval, but I just want to make the board aware of that, and I would like to make that recommendation as part of the conditions of approval. Should the landscaping ordinance be amended, that the board recognizes, we'll come back in and try to take advantage of any advantageous changes to the landscaping ordinance.
So if it's amended, the process that then happens again is what exactly?
Basically, I think it would just be an administrative approval at the staff level, that we would come in and say, hey, you've amended your ordinance. We'd like you to approve this new landscaping plan that complies with the new ordinance. That's all. It doesn't have to come back before you. It doesn't have to go back before the board.
Yes, county staff, do you have any comment on that request?
We would support a condition like that, that if the land development regulations did change in the applicant's favor, that they would be able to modify their plan prior to receiving the certificate of occupancy to document that they meet the LDRs that are currently in place at the time that they complete the project. So
Right.
it makes, and that
Okay,
can
let
be
me
done
ask
at
you
a
a
staff
question
level.
then. So I'm thinking back on some issues we faced in recent years. What set of ordinances normally govern an application? Is it the set of ordinances in place at the time the application is filed, or is it the set of ordinances at some later stage in the process?
It's been my experience that the set of LDRs in effect at the time, the date of the application, are the effective set, because that's a known. There have been instances that have deviated from that. Some of those instances are if there's a pending ordinance doctrine that gets enacted. At some point, there's a cutoff date that's announced for that pending ordinance. And the others, in a situation similar that we're discussing, if it changes in the applicant's favor, typically the applicant has had the ability to come back in, modify their plans, and showed that they're consistent with the LDRs if it works in their favor rather than becomes more restrictive.
Is there anything in the ordinances that recognizes that opportunity or that right of staff to make the change?
Yes, we can always come in for an administrative approval for any part of the ordinance that, any part of our site plan that doesn't rise to the level of your review. For example, if we wanted to add parking spaces, or if we wanted to remove parking spaces, or if we wanted to do anything that doesn't rise to the level that requires your review, that's always the case, whether you approve something tonight or whether it's a site plan that's been in existence forever.
Okay. And I guess the reason why I'm expressing a little bit of hesitancy is I'm familiar with situations where the use of the property changed after the application was filed. And I think in the past the county has quite rigidly held that the allowed uses of the property are governed at the time the application is filed. Whereas this is something different. You're talking landscaping or some peripheral issues that, but the use has always been authorized.
May I comment?
Yes, please.
So yeah, you're exactly right, and that's what John was talking about. That's usually when that pending ordinance doctrine applies. So what happens is if the county's proposing to change the use of a piece of property from single-family residential to environmental or something like that, and that's been announced, and applicants come in and rush to try to beat that amendment. In certain cases, the county is permitted by law to recognize that, hey, there's a pending ordinance. This isn't a race to the courthouse. We don't have to approve your rezoning, or we don't have to approve your site plan at this point. That's what that pending ordinance document is about. But it usually only applies to use. It usually only applies to changes of use in the zoning ordinance.
Bill, are you comfortable with the exception that is being requested?
Yes. At Tuesday's meeting, the board expressed their concern with the amount of landscaping that was going in the other area off of 122nd, and the amount of landscaping that was required really wouldn't be of a benefit to anyone, only because 122nd is I believe it's a private road, and that there are gates on it. It's maintained by the St. John's Water Management District, Water Control District, I should say, and they expressed the opinion that in those circumstances, since there is no parking required, it's an unmanned station, there are no residents in the area and no public that would visit the site, they thought staff might reassess and reevaluate the need for the landscaping there. I don't know if the same would hold true in this site. Again, there are public roads here. There is traffic there. There are public roads that are surrounding the site, or bordering the site, I should say. So I don't know if the board would go along with something like that or not. But now that I've kind of clarified it, to answer your question, yes, I'm comfortable with that.
And we agree with Mr. DeBrawl. We don't know if the change is going to affect this site or not. We're just saying if it does, we want the same consideration.
And if it does, all you're doing is creating a path where you can come in and request to be relieved.
By the staff, yes, sir.
Yeah, there's no automatic relief.
No.
Yeah.
They have to approve the new landscaping plan.
Yeah, okay.
Is this modification being made in anticipation that the LDR is going to change?
It's pretty clear from the board's direction on Tuesday that the LDRs are going to be seriously looked at for certain situations. I've had this discussion with Ryan. He doesn't think it'll apply to this site, and he's probably right. But if it does, we're just preserving our rights.
So are they going to be reviewed at the county commission level, or are they going to be reviewed at this level, or your level?
It would be reviewed at a staff level for changes that might be applicable for, as Mr. DeBall described it, the more remote sites where there may not be a benefit in really taking that into account and examining that. Once that was examined, there may be a land development regulation amendment proposed. If it's proposed, that would take the normal course of a land development amendment. It would go before you all at a public hearing, much the way the sign ordinance just did, and then would go to the Board of County Commissioners at a public hearing and be evaluated by the board at a public hearing. And if they adopted it, then the change would be effective, and the applicant could then file for being consistent with the change in the land development regulations. Thank you.
Does any other commissioner have any questions of Mr. Barquette? Mr. Barquette, do you have anything further you'd like to present?
No, not on this matter. On the Blue Cypress, Florida Power and Light has a small presentation, but on this matter, just if there's any questions.
Okay.
And again, we support
Very
the
good.
staff report. Thank you.
And would anybody else like to be heard on this matter? If not, we'll go ahead and close the quasi-judicial hearing. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve with staff recommendation.
None? Now, let's make sure we're clear on the staff recommendation.
With the minor revision.
With the minor revision.
Correct,
Okay.
which would include the support of the land development regulation changes if amended.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, we have, Mr. Landers made that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Well, Dr. Day seconded the motion. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is item 6A on the agenda. Again, I'll read it into the record. It is a public hearing. It is quasi-judicial. It's FPL Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center. It's request for special exception use approval for a private heavy utility facility, which is a solar energy center. Florida Power and Light Company is the owner. Culpeper and Turpinning, Inc. is the agent. It's located on the west side of 98th Avenue between 4th Street and 9th Street Southwest, which is Oslo Road. The zoning is A2, agricultural 2, up to 1 unit per 10 acres. The land use designation is AG2, agricultural 2, up to 1 unit per 10 acres. It is quasi-judicial. Again, I would ask if any commissioner has had any site visits, ex-parte communications, investigations, any other matters which have brought facts or evidence to their attention concerning this matter, or was aware of any other matter which might cause a conflict in their ability to decide this matter on a fair and impartial basis. Hearing none, I'll make the same disclosures that I made previously, now about my brother's situation, about working cooperatively with FP&L on the county attorney situation, and again, I'll ask that question. If anybody believes that I do not have the ability to be fair and impartial on this matter, please speak up now, and I'll be happy to recuse myself. If not, I do believe I can be fair and impartial, and so we'll go ahead with the public hearing. We'll start with opening the public hearing. Everybody who intends to be heard on this matter, please stand and be sworn to by the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yeah.
Okay, we'll ask the county to present its initial presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Again, I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. This is a request for special exception use approval for a private heavy utility, which will be known as the FP&L Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center. A brief slide about the special exception process. Special exception uses must meet the general criteria, which equate to evaluating the appropriateness and compatibility of the requested use for the site. This project is classified as a private heavy utility, which requires special exception use in the A2 zoning district. Special exceptions must also meet the specific land use criteria, and in this case, that's 971.44 subpart 2. The special exception process requires 2 public hearings, one tonight in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as one in front of the Board of County Commissioners. And the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend to the board to either to approve the request with conditions, or to deny the request. Again, I'll go over sort of the overall location map one last time. State Road 60 at the top. The FPL Indian River solar site, which has already been approved at the southwest corner here. The FPL Blue Cypress site is on the west side of 98th Ave. The Heritage substation that we just approved is on the east side. And again, it's bound by 4th Street to the north and Oslo to the south. And again, a zoomed in version of the location map. 4th Street to the north, Oslo Road, 9th Street to the south, 98th on the east side, and 102nd Avenue on the west side. Here, again, is an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site, and it is an old grove site as well. And an overall site plan. It's hard to make out at this scale, but what it does show is that in this particular application, that the solar panels or solar arrays occupy essentially the entire site, as opposed to FPL Indian River, which was roughly the northern half. This site is essentially capped out with arrays and access pathways. Site plan detail at a zoomed-in view gives you a little better picture of exactly how it looks. And again, solar arrays are essentially edge-to-edge with stabilized access roads. And in particular, you may recall from the staff report that there is a small grove maintenance site that was retained by the I think now former owner. I believe FP&L is closed on the property, West Vero Farms. They own approximately 1,500 acres of groves to the west. And as a condition, a recommended condition of approval, this small agricultural maintenance site will be combined with the parent parcel to the west. Excuse me. Here's the vehicular access plan shows the gated entry to 102nd Ave, as well as the typical stabilized access paths. This is a similar design as the FPL Indian River site. Again, this is an unmanned, secured site, so formal paved parking is not required. The maintenance vehicles will park within and maneuver around the site within the security fence. The project access route for this particular project will be from State Road 60 south down 98th Avenue. 98th Ave is paved until it's a little after 8th Street, where Verona and Trace Development ends. And there are, and you may recall from the staff report, several culvert crossings that cross the county right-of-way along the project access route. And there is a staff recommended condition that some improvements, if you will, asphalt millings be installed over those crossings. Lastly, environmental issues. There are two small, low-quality wetlands on site. The plan it meets the minimum required setback from those wetlands, and therefore there are no proposed impacts to those wetlands, and no mitigation will be required. They will simply cohabitate with the solar arrays around them. And staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the board that they grant special exception approval for the proposed FPL Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center with conditions stated in the staff report related to the unity of title for the Grove Maintenance Site, the county culvert crossing improvements, and I'm sorry, I failed to mention the alternate project route, which is if they were to propose an alternate project route, that would need to be approved by the Public Works Department, and again, those same county culvert crossing protections would need to be installed along any alternate route. Thank you.
Does any commissioner have any question, county staff? If not, is the applicant here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Ryan said, this is functionally equivalent to the Indian River Solar site, which you've already approved, and which the Board of County Commissioners has approved. Krista Hendricks is here just to give you a brief slide presentation on a little more details about how the site works, and then we'll take questions, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Krista Hendricks. We spoke about a month ago. I am with Florida Power and Light with the Solar Development Group. We are here tonight to discuss the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center, to answer any questions you guys may have. The site will be located, can you go to the next slide for me? Thank you, Ryan. The site will be located on approximately 424 acres. The site is located between 4th Street and Oslo Road. It's all within the St. John's Improvement District. Pending all approvals and permits from Indian River County, we intend to start construction this summer and expect to be complete by March 2018. Thank you. This site will use the same photovoltaic panels that we talked about in our previous, at our previous hearing. They'll be mounted as fixed tilt arrays. The facility is designed to avoid wetland impacts and is limited to the existing agricultural fields. As you can see, the areas, as Ryan mentioned earlier, the wetland impacts are avoided with the panels. Something else to point out, there is no on-site substation for this project compared to the Indian River Solar Energy Center that you previously approved. This project will connect to the Heritage switchyard. Once construction is complete, as previously stated, the plants will operate without water, fuel, or on-site personnel will place little demand on any public services, and no additional traffic will be generated by this project once in construction. I'll be happy to take any questions, and we have a team here if you have any further questions for us.
Any commissioner have any questions of the FPL representatives? If not, thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to be heard on this matter? Anything further from the county? Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see you over here. Please step forward.
Commission Chairman and members of the P&Z Commission, I'm Mike Ziegler. I reside at 3375 12th Street, Vero Beach. I'm working with W.C. Graves IV, who is here, owner of the property. To Mr. Sweeney's map, it would be the diagonal north and west of the heritage site. It's a 40-acre parcel. It fronts on its east side on 98th.
Can we get that back up, Ryan?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair, give me 1 second here. I think I might have it better. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have a great aerial, but essentially it's on the north side of 4th Street, catty corner from the, so it's due north of Blue Cypress, correct?
Yes, and Mr. Sweeney, if you could use your access route map. That was
Absolutely.
That describes where the culverts are that we are expressing our concern about. That would be it.
There we go.
The property is owned by W.C. Graves IV. It's known to him and his family as the Holland Grove. And to its east are 3 culverts. The northwardmost culvert is a Indian River Farms culvert. The center culvert is his drainage and irrigation culvert, and the south one is the county. And what is of concern to us is that the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center request outlines topping or overlaying each of those culverts with road millings. The purpose of the road millings is to avert a collapse of the culvert, and that's been our concern, that if there is a culvert collapse, it may involve personal injury and property damage. And so we formally request this board to consider requesting a professional engineer review of that particular roadway portion, which is the graded portion south of Verona, to ensure that there should be no vehicular traffic or any other accident caused by the failure of a culvert or the placement of the millings over the culverts to attempt to sway the load bearing on the culvert. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that, as proposed, this 1 foot of millings over the top center of the culvert, trailing out 50 feet on north and south, that they serve, the culverts continue to serve drainage, and in Mr. Gray's condition, irrigation. The top dressing approach may solve the immediate problem, but may not be adequate in the long run. So we want to recognize Mr. Graves' concern about the failure. And so we have essentially a vulnerability problem that should be assessed by a professional engineer with a written recommendation and findings so that we all know where we are going. It is possible that those culverts are inadequate for the intended construction vehicular traffic. We would like to make certain that that accident does not occur. So we have 2 requests. One is to evaluate and assess the integrity of the existing culverts. And secondly, to request professional engineering report of findings with recommendations that ensure safe travel on the graded portion of the 98th Avenue without the short-term top dressing approach. Most importantly, to avert an accident involving personal injury or property damage directly caused by culvert and or roadway inadequacies. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Chairman. Do you have any questions?
Quick question. And you touched on it, it didn't imprint. What do we have, 4 culverts here? that we're talking about?
Yes, there are 4 culverts on the map, and
Right.
3 of those are within the property, east side.
So who owns the culverts? Who owns the culverts?
The center one that I'm speaking for specifically is owned by W.C. Graves IV, the landowner of the grove to the west.
Mhm. Okay. I'd ask a question. Where did this solution come from? The 12 inches of asphalt millings installed for a distance of 50 feet in each direction?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that was a recommendation from the Public Works Director during their review of the traffic study. And I believe that may have actually come from also
David Gunter.
the Indian River Farms Water Control District Manager, David Gunter, recommended that to our Public Works Director, who passed it through along to our staff.
I know your staff includes traffic engineering. You have an engineering division within Public Works.
Correct.
Would that engineering division have the specialty to review this issue, and did they review this issue as far as you know?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of that. Whether or not we have the expertise, it is my understanding that evaluation did not occur at the county level. No.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
If I could clarify one more thing, it's my understanding that the culverts themselves, all 4 culverts are private culverts. It's county right of way, but the culverts themselves are privately owned and maintained. So it's, albeit in the county right of way, the culverts themselves are a private owned and maintained improvement, if you will.
So as it stands now, if there is an issue with those culverts, who's responsible for fixing or replacing?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Landers, it would be the culvert owner, whether it be Indian River Farms Water Control District or the particular one, Mr. Graves' culvert. And to repair or replace those culverts, they would need to request and obtain a county right-of-way permit, but the repairs or replacement would be the responsibility of the culvert owner, the private owner.
How deep are the culverts? What's the, from
cover.
ground level down to the top of the culvert? What are we talking about here?
6, 8 feet. 6 or 8 feet
Okay.
on this particular culvert, Mr. Graves.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions or comments of this gentleman?
Yes. So, Mr. Ziegler, it's only the second culvert from the top that Mr. Graves owns?
I believe that is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That serves a center ditch in the property that he has.
All right. And currently, is this road used for citrus harvesting?
Yes.
Right, so if a citrus truck would go over it and break the culvert, no question that Mr. Graves would have to get the permit, get the equipment out there, have somebody do it and repair it.
I would think there would be no question.
Okay. Do you know how much weight a culvert like this can handle? Is a citrus truck loaded with grapefruit heavier or lighter than FPL equipment that's going to be coming down here?
No.
Do we know?
No. It's beyond my knowledge on that. But what concerned us is that when the recommendation came that they overtop these culverts with the millings, it suggests that the weight distribution has to be altered in order for the capacity of the culvert to remain its integrity, to retain its integrity. And that's of concern to us.
Do you know how old the culvert is out there?
How old is your culvert? 1981?
Okay.
Probably.
Now, and Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, yes, we do have, the county does have the in-house expertise to be able to evaluate culverts. We had an assignment from the board to have Public Works go and take a look at some culverts in the Gifford area along 49th and 45th Street at the request of a citizen. So I know that we have done that in the past on paved roads. I don't know about dirt roads, but we would have the expertise. Unfortunately, these are privately owned culverts, and we wouldn't go and inspect.
Who owns the other three?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Day, it's my understanding, I believe the other three is the farms, Indian River Farms Water Control District.
Mr. Barquette, do you have any comment on the request?
Yes, sir. Just wanted to point out that the applicant will have to get a permit from the Public Works Department to put the millings over the culverts. And if the Public Works Department in its evaluation determines that something additional is required, then that's what we'd have to do. But we're not willing to fund a study that the Public Works Department hasn't deemed appropriate. And also wanted to point out that once construction is finished, there is no further traffic on this. So the gentleman mentioned long-term, if they fail, that won't be our doing, because once construction is done, we don't generate any traffic. I mean, not even any car traffic. So we think we can rely upon the Public Works Department to either issue or not issue the permit to put the millings over to use the culverts and the road and the public road, by the way, for our construction. But after that, I'm not sure that FPNL is or should be responsible for what might happen. Only if it fails during our construction because of the result of our traffic.
And what would be your response at that point?
I mean, I guess it depends on what happens. You know, I mean, I can't tell you what we're going to do based upon something that might happen, and we don't know what's going to happen. So I won't answer that, and you can't expect me to.
John, if while your staff was reviewing this application, you suspected there might be an issue with collapsing these culverts during the construction process, what would you do to try to solve that issue just in the course of your processing the application? Or at least to address the issue, I should say.
If things are suspected through the process, and typically this issue is addressed by our Public Works Department post-approval for construction access, but again, it's usually not as involved or large a project. And most times it's not on unpaved roads. So in those circumstances, usually our county staff would, if they suspected any issues, would go back to the applicant and say, we suspect that there might be an issue. Please give us more information about this issue so we can better evaluate where we're at and what might need to be done, if anything needs to be done. So it'd be a request for additional information at that point and trying to find out if indeed that there is a problem if one is suspected.
And do you, well, I guess I asked you that very question. Did traffic engineering, have they been alerted to this issue? I know you prepared this printout, which suggests that at least your process looked at this issue.
It's my understanding that this condition came about through and again, through the Indian River Farms to our Public Works Director, and then our Public Works Director, our engineering Public Works staff indicated that this was a precautionary measure that should be taken.
And this is something that's been done previously elsewhere? Is that where this is coming from?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you mentioned the
Sure, Mr. Chair. In a paved situation, they've been evaluated and assessed. In an unpaved with private culvert,
the county has looked at county-owned culverts in paved rights-of-ways. Is I believe what Bill was. Haven't looked at private culverts. This would essentially be like a driveway culvert if it were turned 90 degrees, or on a residential street. If your driveway culvert fails, it's the property owner's responsibility to then repair that.
So Indian River Farms also expressed concern about the other three culverts?
That's my understanding. And again, that's at least secondhand, if not thirdhand, to me.
Is there any point in the staff taking another look at this?
Yes, Commissioner Dr. Day, exactly. The right-of-way, there will be a requirement to obtain a right-of-way permit in order to place the millings within the county right-of-way. And at that time, Public Works does have the ability to take a closer look at the culvert crossings themselves or any improvements within the county right-of-way.
And at that time, will they be alerted to this discussion?
Well, they're already aware of it to some extent.
Now, the second condition on the recommendation It says that prior to utilizing the access route for construction traffic, the applicant shall install the required culvert crossing improvements as shown on the attached exhibit, which I assume is the millings.
Correct, yeah, so the exhibit is essentially just identifying the locations, as well as there is a note that defines the improvements, which again is 12 inches of millings. 50
If we
feet.
change that condition to eliminate the as shown in the attached exhibit and just say shall install, if we just said shall install the county required culvert crossing improvements,
That could be an
is that
umbrella.
something that would require then the county looks at it, and if the county thinks that 12 inches of millings is insufficient and something further might be required, is that a place that we can go? In other words, the condition you've listed here
It's too specific.
has us adopting a solution on the culvert crossing.
Is more specific. The suggested condition is more open-ended, and I think that is a place we could go. I'm not sure if that gets us much further, but it is a bit more open-ended and does allow a little bit more latitude for the Public Works Department if they get out there and see something that might be beneficial to be done.
Yeah, what it does is eliminates this commission's sanction, if you will, of the 12 inches of millings as the solution. And it basically says the county traffic department will look at that issue and require whatever solution is deemed appropriate, which may not change, who knows, but at least it gives, it leaves that question, as you say, open for further analysis by county engineering. Mr. Barquette, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have any objection to that. We trust Mr. Spirica to do what's right about this, and so I don't have any objection to your modification.
Okay.
Further question. Mr. Ziegler, are they corrugated metal pipes? A 12-inch, 18-inch, 24-inch, do we know?
A guess. I'm not professional engineering, but the northmost culvert by the Indian River Farms Drainage District is, I believe, a 24 up to a 36-inch corrugated culvert. If you look at the east side ditch, you'll see that it has rotted out and no longer exists the bottom portion on its exit side toward the ditch. That's one of our triggers of concern. Now the next ditch south, the next culvert south, is one Mr. Graves has. It's connected to a pump, we thought in 1981 installation. We think, but we're not certain, that it was a Core 10 steel, and it's probably a 24-inch diameter. And Core 10 has the ability to withstand a lot more corrosion than corrugated galvanized steel. And I don't know, I can't see the outlet on the other two to the south, whether they are also corroded or rotted or still in integrity.
Okay.
Were they all installed in 81?
No, Dr. D. I know that Mr. Graves' pump, which is the outfall from his grove straight out, and then a pump which pumps back through a pipe, that was installed, according to Mr. Graves, at about 1981.
And how long, what's the lifespan of a Core 10 pipe?
I'm not the professional engineer.
Okay.
I think that's part of our request, is for a professional engineer having the skills to evaluate the corrugated pipes as well as the Core 10 pipe or whatever it is, to make sure that both the county and the landowners are comfortable that there will not be an accident caused by this failure. The issue that the milling overtopping suggests that somebody in the engineering field or the road department suggests that there may be a failure unless there is an additional topping. So that raises our concern too. We would just like really a professional opinion on what should be done, and I agree with the chairman that maybe if it's open-ended, there is another evaluation, and it comes back, maybe there is a condition.
I guess my concern is listening to the description of what's out there. I don't know how easy an evaluation could be carried out unless, I mean, is vegetation going to have to be removed? Are we going to have to start to excavate soil buildup around the pipe? Or, I mean, what would it take for an engineer to be able to get in there and take a look at it?
My experience in agricultural culverts and wells is that there are camera facilities that can be put into the culverts, and from the you can see the variations within the culvert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If that northernmost culvert is visibly rotted out, is that something that would touch off a county staff response? If you can see that it's rotted?
I would say that would need to be understood by your engineering department, so I don't have a comment either way on that.
But if they reviewed it and ran the cameras through it and determined that there was an issue with it, it's a private culvert, they're going to require Mr. Ziegler's people to replace it, correct?
Yes.
Correct. And typically, the county wouldn't inspect a private improvement.
Right.
So
ultimately, whether we study it or not, if it fails, it's going to fall back upon the Graves family to replace it.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, my thinking is all three of us have the same interest. In other words, nobody wants the trucks to squash the culvert and destroy the culvert. If that happens, FPL may have liability, so I assume that FPL would want to make sure they're not going to squash this culvert. So all of our interests are aligned in the same direction. And I think at this point, the best we can probably do is, as I say, modify that condition, count on traffic engineering, and probably talking with FPL's engineering. They've got engineers on staff, I'm sure, and coming up with a solution that everyone's reasonably comfortable will not squash this man's culvert. That's my thinking. Any other comments from either questions or comments from the commissioners or anyone else here tonight? If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Thank you. And gentlemen, your preference. I can wait as long as the rest of you.
Well, I'll move that we approve with the modification suggested by the chair. And did you get that verbiage?
I did, and I believe that would be removing the last 6 words of number 2.
Well, it would, and also reversing the required county and the county required. The applicant shall install the county required culvert crossing improvements.
I'll second.
Okay, we did have Dr. Day with the motion and Mr. Stewart with the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 7, Commissioners' Matters. Does any commissioner have any matters? Do any commissioners matter?
All commissioners.
Item 8 is planning matters. We did receive a planning information package. I just comment, I found it interesting, particularly item 7 about the shopping malls and where that's all headed. Any attorneys' matters? Item 8, item 9.
No, Mr. Chairman.
I just,
For planning matters?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we know the schedule for meetings?
we have some insight into that, and our insight is the decks are somewhat empty for April. So it does not look certainly like there'll be the first April meeting, maybe the second April meeting, April 27th. So April 13th, probably not. April 27th, maybe. And we're certainly getting a number of things in the door right now. So it looks like it'll fill up as certainly the year
To the extent it's influenced, May is very bad for me.
Okay.
So if it's a choice between the last meeting in April or the first meeting in May, I would at least ask if without burdening people, try to do it in April.
Okay. And we do discuss that with applicants as far as their schedules and trying
Right.
to get folks to a meeting that is beneficial for them and works with their schedule. And then just a couple of other items quickly. The Board of County Commissioners did pass the signed ordinance at their March 7th meeting that you all took action on. And as mentioned here, they did approve the previous FP&L project with a couple of slight modifications to a couple of conditions. So that's all.
Very good. Anything else to come before us tonight? If not, thank you all for attending. Meeting's adjourned.